Well, happy Friday, Ryan.
Yeah, great to see you, Steve. Excited today. Really cool guests coming in.
Yes, much cooler than any of us.
Every week.
And get ready, people, because the energy level in the room is about to go up.
Nice.
That is for sure. We're excited to welcome Doug Logan. And Doug has been to Emergence. He's preached at Emergence before. He works with Acts 29. He has a couple different roles. So he's co-director of Church in Hard Places, which he can share a little bit about that and what that work is. But then he also works with Grimke, which is the new seminary that Acts 29 has begun for pastors and ministry leaders. And so really excited to bring him on. And so let's get him in here. Is Doug with us? Oh, yeah. There he is. There he is. What's up, Doug?
Man, all is well. Good to see you guys.
Good to see
you guys. Look very refreshed, and your hair has the proper amount of gel.
My hair has moved into Jim Halpert status. That's the length I'm rocking right now.
But at least Jim turned into like an action superstar on Jack Ryan, so you have hope.
My body has not turned into Jim Halpert status.
Well, Doug, good to see you, man.
Man, good to be here, man. Hanging in there. But you guys love Emergence. Excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me, man. Emergence is dear to me because I'm from Paterson. So to see you guys doing that work right there is a joy, great joy to my soul. Praying as we press deeper over these next couple of years to see Emergence plant a couple of churches in Paterson all around. So I'm praying and just love you guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, really good to have you, man, and always. And you've been a blessing to us in a lot of ways. Why don't we just start by giving people a little bit of context? Where are you serving now? What's your role? What does that look like for you on the regular?
Well, back in 2011, I planted Epiphany Camden in Camden, New Jersey, plant out of 10th Pres in Epiphany, Philly. My pastor, Dr. Eric Mason. So I served there until 2018, and me and the wife just felt oppressed to move forward as we planted a bunch of urban churches. I really wanted to plant more and care for them. Therefore, man, opportunity came up to work. Our church is an Acts 29 church. I've been in and around Acts 29 since 2006. So I came on full time to build out the Acts 29 urban ministry arm, along with my partner in crime, my good brother, Mez McConnell, in Edinburgh, Scotland. And so 2018, we jumped in full feet. I resigned from, I don't want to say resign because it wasn't resign. I transitioned out of Church of Epiphany Camden, handed it over to one of my spiritual sons, Dr. Ernest Grant. And yeah, man, so I serve as co-director for Church in Our Places, which is primarily leading the urban ministry arm of Acts 29 in the States. Mez was primarily working the rest of the globe, and I had the U.S. Also, we launched, me and a couple of partners in crime, Chris Atwell, Tony Marita, Brian Laughlin, Doug Punder. We put together and built out a seminary called Grimke Seminary, in which I serve as president and director of urban ministry. So,
hey, Pastor.
Yes, sir.
Pastor Doug, Grimke is awesome name, amazing ministry. I'm not sure if a lot of people listening know anything about him. Would you give us a...
Yeah, I'll do it in a snapshot. Francis Grimke was born of, his mother was a slave, father was the slave owner. Mixed kid, wound up fleeing after his father died. Brother kept him in slavery, was supposed to free him, and he didn't, so he fled, went and was a valet even in the Confederate Army for a minute. His aunts, the Grimke sisters, famous abolitionists, helped put him in college. He wound up going to Princeton, finishing with his Doctor of Divinity in the late 1800s, 1870 or so, and onward from there. He pastored a church in Washington, D.C. For about 59 years, 15th Street Presbyterian Church. So, yeah, so this biracial pastor, former slave, strong huge brain theologian, lover of people and lover of pastors. He's been a hero for me as a former Presbyterian. I'm an undercover Presbyterian now. So as a former Presbyterian, he was a big deal for me. So what his aunts did embody what we want to do. We want to be in position to help guys who want to serve Christ do that. And their investment came back 1,000,000-fold. They took their money, helped him, and his ministry goes far wide and beyond. So yeah, so we wanted to embody Francis Grimke as our school. So we launched with that name, honoring that. And yeah, so we're excited about that.
I was saying to you before the call, it's really interesting because he pastored during the Spanish flu, and he chose to kind of not meet in his church for a season for the good of those around him. And so he's got some really awesome writing about what it's like in that season.
Yes. He's a brilliant thinker, and I like to call him a jabber. One of the writings about the Spanish flu, he says, in all this, racism, the Spanish flu should show us about basically the Imago Dei. Every race is getting sick.
He said that the flu shows no respecter of
no respecter of persons. And he took a little jab there, and he walks it out. So yeah, I love his brain. He studied under Charles Hodge, and man, just does well. He's just a brilliant theologian, and I love what he represents, and we want to embody that. Of course, we want to exalt Christ and great preachers, but man, we want to train pastors to pastor, and theologically driven pastors. So yeah, so that's the joy for Grimke. Love it.
That's great.
Yeah, it's helpful, Doug, because a lot of guys want to learn from history, and they go, I'm trying to study the movement of the gospel in America, and yet the only guys I can see historically are these white European reformers. How can I build my bench so that I'm hearing from different voices? How would you direct those guys?
Man, I would push you to do a little tougher research, because there's a lot of stuff, but publications were much different then. So discrimination reached all the way into publication. So even if you were a faithful gospel preacher, there wasn't African-American led publishing houses necessarily. I'm sure there were somewhere, but not widespread and not maybe super accessible. And so even Dr. Francis Grimke's, the works of Dr. Francis Grimke, you can hardly find them. So man, I am praying that maybe even somebody hears this, says, Doug, I'm going to help you talk a publisher into republishing those, because I'd love to get those out. Right now, they're on Google Docs, so you can get them, but I would love to turn those real. So first thing I would say is dig a little deeper and understand that there were non-white dudes, and white dudes were killing it. Make no mistake, because it's the gospel, right? But there were some non-white dudes that were putting in work that didn't have the publishing or platform opportunities. So when I think about Francis Grimke from then, Carter G. Woodson, who did the editing there, I think about Carl Ellis in our modern day. Carl Ellis, great speaker, great preacher. Of course, my pastor, Dr. Eric Mason. There's a host of people who are rock stars. My pastor in Paterson, New Jersey, at Christ Temple Baptist Church, I mean, he pastored there like 40 some odd years. They didn't even do recordings. They didn't even have cassettes. They might have had 8 tracks back then. But he was married for like 50 years. I would have loved if he would have wrote a book and told me how to be married for 50 years. But a lot of people didn't have opportunity. So we just got to dig and chase. But some of those names I threw at you, and there's a boatload more. You're making me think I'm going to post as many as I can. When I look up, if I turn back around, I might mention that guy. He has a book too. And,
yeah, that's a good one.
And so I've got a whole stack. And so I'll do my best to have a post ready to send to you guys to put up a bunch of my recommendations.
We don't often get to plug books on Free for All Friday, but the fact that we do today, we're going to do it. This is like a conference right now. We're going to plug Doug Logan's book, On the Block. Check it out, people.
I think about Thabiti, my good friend. It's just a bunch of good cats out here putting some work in. And then my old school, W.B. Du Bois, and yeah, Frederick Douglass's writings. Just dig in and grab and find articles. And so don't just look for books, look for some articles and some sermons and stuff, because there was a lot of if we let history tell it, there was nobody. No ethnic minorities out there doing. No, there was just not a lot published. So that's why I fight so hard and push on guys to publish, to blog, to write, and to do, man, because I want that story, the beautiful gospel story. We talk about diversity, but I'm praying for diversity at every aspect. Seminary profs, publishing, and those things just aren't real. And I want them to be real, but it's not real right now. And I'm praying for more ethnic minorities, not just African Americans, but man, Haitians, West Africans, to be involved in impact, influence, write, publish, and professor, so that beautiful diversity that the Bible teaches, that pantete ethne, that all nations, comes out in our structures of both learning and writing, man. And I think it'll be a blessing to the church, an absolute amazing blessing to the church.
Well, Pastor Doug, in just a couple minutes, like I know, there's lots of great ways to give God glory for your story and what he's done in your life. But I'm just curious for you in terms of coming to know who Jesus is, responding to him. How did you first come to know Christ?
Man, I was 1996, grew up in the church in Paterson, not a Christian, church boy. So I knew everything church except Jesus. And mother, a strong believer. And man, so I was living with this girl on Camden Ave in Morristown, New Jersey. And I owned a barber shop in Willingboro, New Jersey. So I hired a bunch of Christians because I figured they wouldn't steal. And one of them, my good friend who lives in Virginia now, Deacon Jay Sykes, man, was always sharing the gospel with me, and he was bringing all these preachers in, and they just started plugging in on me with the gospel for years. And then finally, one day I went to a Bible study with him, and crazy dispensational Bible study, and they were talking about the planes are going to be crashed if there's a Christian pilot in the last days, and then the cars are going to be crashed, and then mark of the beast and the whoosh. And then, I was like, this is like a horror movie. I don't, you got to get your head cut off and all that. I was like, what? The Bible is awful. That's why I was like, I'm out of here. So I remember I got home that night, man, and I was freaked out. And living with this girl, she was a hard atheist, and I was a fake Christian. And man, I remember from the Bible study that he said when the last trump sounds, if a pilot is a Christian, the plane is going to crash because the pilot's going to get raptured out and the cars are going to crash and all of that. So I wake up about 2:30 in the morning. Man, it's in my head. It's in my head. I live next to the fire department. Fire department alarm went off, so I ran outside thinking it was the last trump, and I was left behind. Underwear and everything. And I'm like, yo. So I go back in the house and I call Sykes. I'm scared to call him because it's 2:30 in the morning. So if he answers, I'm good. If he doesn't answer, I'm trapped and I've got to get the mark of the beast and all this other spooky dookie. But it's 2:30 in the morning. And so you have to call him on a regular phone. And people in 1996 didn't answer the phone at 2:30 in the morning. And so I don't call Sykes and hung up. So finally he answers the phone. He says, "What you calling me at this time for, boy?" And I said, "I'm good, man. God bless you. I'll see you in the morning." We worked at the barbershop together. Man, I received Christ. Now that week before, I'll tell you this, I was at the barbershop and Sykes had said, I prophesy, was a preacher with him. He said, the preacher said, "I prophesy that you are going to receive Jesus and you're going to stop running that mouth for the devil, start running that mouth for God." And Jay Sykes, my friend, said, "And you, Mr. Pro-Black, you're going to marry that little white girl you've been dating that you think we don't know you dating. And you're going to be a pastor of a church. And your church is going to be a white church, Mr. Malcolm X preacher." And I was like, F all y'all preachers. And then about 11 days later, I told God, I'll do the thing they prophesied, whatever that means. I'll do whatever they said. I just don't want to be left behind. And so we got up that morning and Angel was like, "What is wrong with you?" I said, "Listen, I'm a Christian now, so can't have sex with you no more. We got to get married and I want to have sex with you. So we got to go get married." So we went that morning and drove to Elkton, Maryland and got married.
Wow.
That following week, I was preaching on the streets of Philadelphia. So
you are probably the only person's testimony to contain both dispensational end times and like a charismatic prophet. It's like
making everybody cringe.
Bench.
Hey, look! I call myself a cessationist with hot sauce because of that story.
Well, I mean, look, you are, you're not in Jersey anymore. You're down a little further south, a little out of the element. But
before we hear about South, can you just give us, 5 minutes of what life was like in growing up in Paterson?
Going with it, Ryan. You got it.
Huh?
Hey, man, well, for me, growing up in Paterson, I didn't know Paterson was bad until I got to college and I was in the class and they started talking about the stats from the hood. And I started listening and I said, they talking about me. This is bad. And I said, is Paterson bad? I guess based on the stats. I didn't know. See, I didn't know Paterson was bad until I got to college. And then they told me, based on the stats, it's the inner city, it's the high concentration of poverty, it's high violence, single parent homes, lack of education, low literacy, public school, violence, gangs. Man, people in them gangs was my cousins. People who couldn't read, I knew owned barbershops and businesses and paid their bills. Them fights that was happening on my block, they was fair ones. So when I hear that, I'm in Paterson, got cousins, family. So this was regular life for me. I felt safe there. My sister lived in Lakewood, New Jersey. I felt unsafe when I heard crickets and saw, deer running. I thought it was the revenge of Bambi when I saw them deer running. I thought they was coming to get us. And so I was more scared in Lakewood in the white neighborhood, in the suburban white neighborhood than I was with gunshots and gangs in Paterson. Again, it's what I grew up in. So growing up in Paterson for me was fun. I had a good time, rough time, but regular rough. I didn't see it as special rough like, the way statistics can tell the story. Like when you talk about Camden, where I was at being the most dangerous, most violent city in America, I would say that if I was teaching and explaining where we were, and people from Camden would be like, "What are you even talking about? Camden ain't even that bad." because there was no perspective there. So for me growing up, I had fun. My mother spent a lot of energy telling me that I was going to be great. She spent a lot of energy praying over me, telling me that, you know, I was going to go to college. She always told me I was going to be a Baptist preacher, and a Baptist preacher and a lawyer. My guy was Jesse Jackson. I always wanted to be Jesse Jackson. That's why I went to North Carolina A&T, because he went to North Carolina A&T. And so, yeah, man, I had fun in Paterson. You know, it's funny because when I come to preach with you guys, I was never allowed up there by where you guys are. Out there total almost. No, sir. No, sir. I wasn't allowed out there. So when I drove over there to preach, I was like, oh, this is weird. This is because black folk weren't allowed up that part of town. So yeah, you got the Union. That was the end of the line. You went back down the hill.
Wrong side.
So, but I had a great time, man. I enjoyed growing up in Paterson. My grandfather was on East 18th Street, right across the street from the bar where the Hurricane Reuben Carter got framed. So I hung there. Man, it was just, I had a great childhood. I had a lot of uncles, a lot of aunts, a lot of cousins. I had a lot of love. I had a crazy alcoholic, violent father. But again, that was my dad. So he was just crazy and alcoholic. I didn't feel the implications of all that until I got older. So in it, I'll be like, here he go. It was regular. And so by God's grace, somehow he kept me in that, not in some depressed, miserable place, man. It was what it was. And so, yeah, I enjoyed growing up, School 13. Yeah, man, I enjoyed it. East 26th Street, baby. East 26th Street. So I'm encouraged.
Something you taught me that I never knew just from friendship with you is that the gangs would beat you up to try to get you in the gang, right?
Yeah, that was the deal. Yeah, so part of joining, like you could not join. So if you didn't join, they beat you up. Like your option was take this beat down or join, or we're going to beat you down and you're going to join. Back then, yeah, that was early. That was 70s.
So
yeah,
the only way not to get beat up was to
I want you to notice he is doing child labor, violating all child labor laws right now.
Where's my kid coming over?
I'm looking too. Like, mine is 22. He's asleep. So. Yeah, mine's is 22 years old. He up there asleep, snoring. The floor is moving right above my head from his snoring. So, but yeah, man. So yeah, gangs was crazy there. Listen, if there was scary times, that was scary for me, was the gang scene. Yeah, just as a younger kid, man, it was just shootings and stabbings. Yeah, those were freaky. And in that era, there was gang movies where people were dying. So if there was a scary thing for me, it was that. Yeah, but other than that, I don't know. I just wasn't a fearful dude. I had a rough dad and a bunch of cousins who could fight. So I didn't think about it like that. I just thought something happened, I'm gonna go get my cousin and they're gonna beat somebody. So I just didn't think in the categories.
Well, I don't think it's an opportunity. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I was gonna say Paterson, Camden, Richmond.
From the hood to the woods. Yeah, man. Yeah, Paterson, North Philly, Kensington. No, yeah, Paterson, Kensington, North Philly, then Camden. I mean, that ladder just kept going. The steps on the ladder kept breaking, and I just kept going to rougher and rougher. Yeah, it was, so being in Richmond now, man, I'm 49. My oldest is 31. My youngest is 22, worship major at my alma mater, Lancaster Bible. My middle is 23, Aaron. He's works for Acts 29. He does all the videography, the graphics and stuff now. Married, lives here in Richmond. Yeah, man. I think I felt the PTSDs of 20, about 22, 23 years of urban ministry. I felt people don't experience PTSD so they get home. in the war, it's called grit. But when you get home and there's nobody to fight, it kicks in the depression, the instability, the anxiety, and the pain. And that's what it was for me. And so I started to feel that in Camden, and as I was winding down. But that was after I had been serving in. So when I got saved in '96, man, I immediately was preaching on the street with my uncle, Pastor Matthew Galashaw, to the homeless every week. And that's rough ministry. Those guys, some of them are very mentally unstable. They'll threaten to kill you. And it's a tough ministry, great ministry. I loved it, but tough ministry. So I did that in 96 while I was still serving in Burlington, New Jersey there, but I was primarily in Philly in the homeless ministry with my uncle for years. And then I got called to my first church, that church that Sykes talked about. It was an all-white church. I was like the first Black member, and I was the pastor after about 100 years. Calvary Bible Church, special people, special church. So I was there, from 2003 to 2007, 2008. And and then took a little hiatus, went and did the residency with E. Mason, North Philly. North Philly was violent those years. When I was at Calvary Bible Church in Kensington, that had more murders in Kensington and my zip code 19125 than any other zip code in Philadelphia. And so, I was there for 5-6 years, and I was at North Philly for 2.5. North Philly was super violent. Those 2.5 years I was with Dr. Eric Mason. And then to Camden, we launched in January 2012. Coming off a rough time, my father died. 2012 as well. 2011, my father died. Great loss there. And then under the violence and the new stuff in Camden was hot and heavy, tons of murders. So the year we launched, January 2012, it was the most murderous year of Camden's history. And the record-breaking murder was on the steps of the church we were meeting at. The Saturday before the Sunday, I preached. And I remember just couldn't get my head together. So I told the congregation, guys, I'm messed up right now. That murder's got me messed up because they had the little tape and chalked out where the body was. And we just walked outside and we gathered around. And I prayed and preached outside that day, in the cold. I just did not care. That thing was in me. And I just wanted to tell the devil, you ain't running me up out of here. And so, so tons of stuff. My house, jokers outside shooting at each other. Bullets went through my son's room. Car vandalized, attempted break-ins in my house. Constant threats, constant violence, burying tons of kids under 15 through gang wars in Camden for years, funeral after funeral, after funeral, after fight, after violence, breaking up knife fights, seeing young kids go to jail, 14, 15 for murder. Yeah, man, I needed a break. And praise God for Remnant Church, man. They said, I remember Brian Laughlin called me. I was doing Zoom back in 2017, working for Acts 29. So he called my little basement the Zoom room. And he looked at me and said, bro, you need a break. You are gonna go nuts in this place. I said, well, what you want me to do? He said, just move to Richmond. I said, how do I do that? Just pack up. Come on, I got you. I'm gonna come up with a U-Haul. We're just gonna move you down. You're gonna come join our team. And man, we're just gonna do this thing. We're gonna be partners. We're just gonna do ministry. I get off the phone with him and I go to Angel and I say, Angel, this white boy is out of his mind. He's talking supercalifragilistic. And you know what he did, don't you? He came up in the U-Haul, got me and put me in the church house in Richmond, and I live here right now. So he wasn't playing. And so by God's grace, man, do a little bit of counsel, a lot of rest, a lot of praying, a lot of community, man. So those PTSDs was kicking in from depression to nightmares, night tears, random crying, just random, minimal focus, man. God just brought me out. So Richmond has been a sweet place for me. And now, I mean, listen, I feel real good. Have my little spiritual enema. I'm good. Let's ready to roll.
Well, I don't know how to segue from that, but I'm gonna. Yeah, I don't want to miss the opportunity, Doug, just because you've had obviously so many varied experiences, and you've dealt a lot with diversity initiative within Acts 29. You've dealt with your own experience and observing and seeing and speaking into the area of racial reconciliation in the church. And I'm just curious, as you look at the issue of diversity in the church and how churches are wrestling with it and struggling with it. I'm curious, what do you see in the church right now when it comes to dealing with race and trying to figure out how to come to a gospel centered place in it?
Yeah, well, first, we diversity, we have to broaden our picture of diversity. Often in America, diversity is black and white. We have to broaden that because there's different type of black people. My good friend Brian Rich brought that out in Right Color, Right Culture, Wrong Color. There's different type of black. Brian, I'm from the hood of Paterson, New Jersey. Brian said, Doug, I'd be scared to come to your neighborhood in Camden. So we're two different type of black people. And there's several different kind of white people, different kind of Asian people, different backgrounds, different histories. So we have to see diversity from a much bigger and much broader picture. One. And then secondly, Cornelius Van Til said all theology starts with God. And so we have to build out our doctrine of race, if you will, the gospel in race, because we're talking about race. We're talking about how the gospel engages race. What does the gospel have to say about race? Not what does race have to say about race? Because then we're not starting with God. We're starting with a construct, which is not the foundation in which the Christian builds on. And so in light of that, if we just walk the scriptures, we can see racial dynamics happening through and throughout, from Jew, Gentile to the book of Acts. One of the first issues was the Hellenistic Jews and the Orthodox Jews had issue. They had to figure that out. And those were both Jews. And they had some diversity issues off the top. But I think when we peer into that from a doctrinal perspective, we need to walk out, I think, these four statements, and I've preached these four statements. Church history has called them greats. The great promise, on this rock I build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So this church was a Jesus church. It was built on his back and on his promise, on his love and on his sacrifice, on his perfection. And the gates of hell were never going to prevail against it. What was he going to do? He was going to build a church. For who? Because it was an all nations fall in the garden. This church was going to be an all nations church that he was going to be building. Great promise, great commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your strength, all your might, all your heart, the Shema. And love your neighbor as yourself. Notice the missional implications of that. The missional implications of the great promise. He's going to build a church for all nations. Great commandment. We are to love our neighbor as ourselves, missional in its implication. And so this church now is founded on Jesus. We're commanded as this church to love all nations and love our neighbor as ourselves, the good neighbor and the bad neighbor. And then the Great Commission, go forth and make disciples of all nations, pantete ethne, all nations. And then the Great Witness, Acts 1:8, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and you shall be my witnesses, my martyrs, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. So those four great statements bring about authentic diversity and a global movement. In America, we don't have a history of a global movement in our evangelifish looking stuff. We have almost every conservative seminary ever existed is led and has been led right now by a white male. Emancipation Proclamation 1865. From 1865 to now, we can't get a non-white male into a conservative seminary as a president. That's ridiculous. From publishing, Some of the least published people are ethnic minorities. Christian publishing. I'm not talking about just regular Christian publishing. From publishing, seminaries, networks, conferences. I'll say this, and I'm not mad at nobody. I love them. But when I go to T4G, I'm a black eyed pea in a pot of rice. It's very few ethnic minorities. That's just the truth. That's just the truth. We can act like it's not. It's the truth. And from seminaries to that, we have to take a real deep dive, Steve, into what we believe about the gospel and race. And those 4 passages blow up our current structures. And so we got to talk about this Imago Dei. But I think we got to get to real conversations, and we got to move from emotional to reality. Because once you start talking about this, and you talk about slave owning reformers, now people want to do historic love judo, and no longer are we going to talk about Charles Hodge's position on slavery. We're no longer going to talk about Jonathan Edwards' position on slavery, which was unbiblical. But now, well, he was great. He still wrote great. And in the words of propaganda, would we use Cortez's theology? Would we have Aztecs use Cortez's theology, even if it was good? No. And so I'm not advocating, let's throw out Edwards and Hodge. Please don't hear that. Please hear me saying, but I've got to be able to have a conversation and show you and be able for my white brothers who want to defend white reformers that have a wrong, to me, have an when reformers have had an unbiblical view, and say, yeah, I'm sad he had that. Cool. I'm not talking about burning their books. I'm talking about having a real conversation as grown men and say, I'm sorry you had that view. I got some theologians, I wish they had different views too. I'm not talking about hanging and burning them either. But you can't, but I'm not going to have the conversation where you say, well, he was a man of his day. So that justifies his unbiblical position? No, that's not a, you insult my intelligence, and we move out of scholarship and we move into personal. But then when I get personal and want to argue, now I'm emotional. Well, I am emotional. I am. And you are emotional too. Not you. I'm saying the guy I'm arguing with. So let's just be, either we're going to be emotional, we're going to be scholarly, or we're going to be emotionally scholarly and have a real discussion. But those discussions have to happen, and they can't just happen in white spaces. There has to be a real room and a real conversation. That's why I love Acts 29. We're doing our best to do that. I'm not saying we're doing it the best on earth. All I'm saying is I've felt no hindrance, and we're trying to do something. And yeah, man, we trying to do something. We trying to figure it out, but there's a lot of complexities and understanding to this, but the Bible's clear. The gospel and race. The Imago Dei sets the tone for the reality of who we are. In Christ, we are a new creation. We don't have to go no further. I could go further for 20 more days. I got 175 scriptures, proof text in my pocket. I'm a old school Presbyterian. But what are we talking about? In Christ, I'm a new creature. Every race that receives Jesus, we become one family, one body. We need to act it, but that needs to be fleshed out in reality. We can't be Christians here, and then when we get to publishing, seminaries, and then have this isolated, segregated looking structures. No, we've got to have real conversations about what it looks like to really walk in authentic diversity, theologically and practically. Not just say, yeah, I believe in that. And then when I look at your school, you don't have one ethnic minority professor, and you tell me you believe in. I'm lost then. And so listen, man, I'm down. I'm in. I'm down for anybody. And there's a difference too. Guys who I disagree with, many of them, they're not racist. They just have an emotional theological position linked to some theologians they love, and they don't want their hero to be tarnished. And I'm saying, if we've all fallen short of the glory of God, they're already tarnished. So let's just love them for who they are. Yep. I'm a flawed dad. And my kids ain't love me because I'm perfect. They love me because I'm their dad. I'm flawed as heck. They're not going to get to my funeral. My dad was perfect. I'm sure my kids at my funeral are going to say, that joker was a problem. And they're not going to lie.
Look, I think you are one of the most valuable voices in the conversation, honestly. And that's a weight you carry. I feel like you see it as part of your calling. But man, I don't know how after some conversations, you don't just get so frustrated, right? Because here's the thing, it is an emotional conversation. And I don't know why people say, well, now you're getting, like, we talk about human trafficking. That's an emotional issue. You're messed up if you're not emotional about it. Well, you're messed up if you're not emotional about injustice and discrimination. And so, man, I don't know how you avoid the temptation to just go, I'm done with white evangelicalism. I'm done with the whole thing. And I'm just going to take off.
Well, I do every conversation until the next conversation. Quit every time, and then I get rehired 2 hours later when I have the conversation. And but yeah, God has made such great headway. Man, I've got a lot of friends that we came into conversations and disagreeing, and we landed in a good biblical place. But I'm going to argue the Bible, and I'm going to argue the Bible. I'm going to let the Bible be the thermometer up the butt of history, not history go not the other way. So let's take the temperature of history based on the Bible. Was this right? No. Okay. Well, then let's say it wasn't and keep his book. But just know God can use flawed men to produce fruit. How do I know? I'm one.
Well, and there is a blindness, and just like you said, you grew up in Paterson, you didn't know that, any of this stuff was outside of the norm, and so, you were blind to the way that other views saw Paterson.
Yeah.
In the same way, for white evangelical America, church life, suburban, lots of different descriptors you can put in there. To be blind to the reality that racism still exists. It's an awful, abhorrent practice that goes on, and practice. It's a practice. It's not just a belief. Is just as blind. And so, Doug, I'm curious. For people serving in a church that began as completely white, that is by God's grace growing in diversity, but a long way to go. What are ways to engage in this desire to grow in diversity, to grow in a reflection of the Imago Dei as a church, for people in a situation like ours?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, let me lay a presuppositional thought here, Steve, Ryan. If your neighborhood, I always say this, people laugh. If your neighborhood looks like Skittles, I think your church should look like Skittles, all different kind of colors. If your neighborhood looks like the milk, egg, and bread aisle, white, then your church should reflect the community in which you send. We do the ministry of place. And while we're doing the ministry of place, we cover all the races there. And so we have to build out teams and stuff. But if we go to where you guys are, there's a level of diversity. But if I did the numbers, what is it, 14% African-American US thing? If I did the numbers up in, are you guys Passaic County or Wayne County?
We're Passaic County in Tampa. Yeah.
So if we play Passaic County up there where you guys are, all 46 and around there, I mean, I'm not expecting emergence to be like 50-50 African-American, Latino, 33. That's not reality, nor is that the mandate, because there can be a level of superimposing of diversity. a multi-ethnic stuff. Why? I planted in one of the most African-American cities. Like Camden has like 2% Anglo. Where was I going to get this hugely diverse church with white people? The city didn't reflect it. When I read Paul's letters, he wrote a letter to not a race, he wrote a letter to a city, Ephesus, Thessalonica, Galatians. And I think when it says the churches, they were reaching people within those cities. And I speculate that those cities were made up of probably a dominant culture, dominant race, and then sprinkles of people all around. So Paul didn't argue that we need to be diverse in the sense of busing people from Ephesus to Galatia so that we can balance the numbers. Do the ministry of place. And when you do the ministry of place, you'll cover all the races. If you are then at that point ignoring races within your demographic, then you playing and you're not being real and you're going outside of biblical mission in my mind. So therefore, one way we can do is go hard for the place we are. That's what Paul did. Paul went hard in Corinth. He went hard in Galatia. He went hard there. He preached hard at Tyrannus Hall and caused Epaphras to go 100 miles back and plant a church in Colossae. He went hard. He went hard. We just got to go hard where we are and not ignore those. And when we are a largely predominantly white church and we are a largely predominant African-American church, you know what we do? We join networks so that we can lock hands and lock arms, do podcasts in the morning, 9 o'clock on a Friday, have this conversation, hear people see the love of Christ that we have for one another. Bible tells me they'll know us by the love we have. So when they see me loving my white brothers loving me back, we ain't all sensitive about telling white jokes or black jokes. We regular because we bros, eternal bros, ever bros. You more my brother than my cousin who's African-American who doesn't know Christ, right? And so when we begin to live out that reality, that will begin to break down some of those weird things that make us think that each church has to be racially balanced. No, the church got to reach the place. And wherever races are in that place, we go hard for them. When we see a place that we lack the missionality or the calling to it in our zone, we have to own the lostness, I say in my book, own the lostness of that region. And in so doing, we begin to recruit, develop, and build out structures to send. Please don't hear me bragging. Y'all know me better than that. My first son in the ministry was a white guy, Joe Marlin. He's pastoring in a white neighborhood about a mile from my house in Camden, in Gloucester City, where I get called the N-word probably today. I went there for 4 years praying that God would raise up a church here. It's like 98% white neighborhood, a mile from my house in Camden. And we planted Joe Marlin, Epiphany, Gloucester City, a white dude in a white neighborhood. We don't care. White folk need Jesus in the hood, just like black folk need Jesus in the hood. Donnie Cho, a plant of Epiphany Camden. He's an Asian dude, went to Harvard. We don't care. We trying to do this all nations thing. So what can we do? Since we want to be Pante Tai Ethne and reach all nations, you and Ryan, I would come up there and punch one of y'all if y'all tried to reach all of them by yourself because you out of pocket. And that little girl bringing that little plate in would lose her daddy, him trying to be super apostle. No, we call people to raise some money and we ask God, Matthew 9, to raise up more harvesters because the harvest is plenty, the labors are few. And then just like I did, I prayed that God would raise up a white dude to play in Gloucester City. 5 years later, Joe Marlin comes home from Rwanda and he walks up to me and says, Doug, well, he didn't say Doug, he said, Diddy, I'm thinking about planting a church. I said, okay, what you want to do? He says, you probably ain't gonna be into it. I said, what you mean? He said, I'm thinking about planting in Gloucester City. I know it's kind of racist over there. I said, man, let's do it. Come on, let's go over there real quick. I'm gonna introduce you to all my friends over there. He said, what the hell? How you got friends in Gloucester City? Only you, black guy from Camden, can have friends in Gloucester City. So I took him to Gloucester City and off to the races. But I prayed for 5 years, guys. that God would raise up a church. And that's what we have to continue to do. So while our emergence is primarily white, that's okay. We're grown in diversity. I see all the sprinkles of stuff at emergence. I love it because you guys got great commissional hearts. Great commissional heart is not a white church heart. Great commissional heart is saying we want to live out this Pante Taif and we want to live out this all nations. So you just continue to put your dollars, your heart, your prayers, your needs, and your investment in doing that. When you can't do it, your job is to plan emergence best it can be, reach the demographic of the place God has sent you. And then your heart for the nations goes out often through your pocket and your partnerships. So it's your pocket and your partnerships that helps you to diversify. That's it. No more or less. When you guys help me in Camden with a church and send you a check, you are walking in authentic diversity. When you guys say we're going to do a residency, Doug, we really want to reach Paterson. Can you help us? You're in Acts 29. Of course I can help you. You're my folk. We're going to do something. We're going to try to find an African-American, a Latino, an Asian. We're going to reach and it's not just going to be black and white. We've got Indian communities up there in North Jersey that aren't being touched in many ways. We've got Asian communities. We need a boatload of pastors. And so we've just got to use our money, our paper, and our partnerships to build it out. And I think you guys are doing that. I think you guys are trying that. But it's uncharted waters often in our little genre. But for the record, I'm on this call, right? We're trying to figure it out.
We'll have you on numerous more calls in the future, too.
We've been on a bunch of calls trying to figure it out. That's what we do for years, and we're trying to figure it out. But, man, there's not like what Cuomo said, you're just not going to turn the light on. No, this is a crockpot vision that we got to work through because we've started in the lag, right? So now that we got some great commissioner heart guys who are saying this is important, man, we just got to continue to pray fast and ask God to raise up harvesters for the nations. God, give us money to pay them, give us money to plant them, and let's just do it. And I think that's what we do. I'm sorry to go so long on that.
Man, I could listen to you talk all day. So, hey, real quick, we're going to turn it just a little lighter as we finish up here, Doug. So, for you, what do you miss most about Jersey, man?
Man, I don't know.
I was expecting a little more clear answer.
My computer's about to die. I got to grab a cord. I'll be back in 10 seconds.
Yes.
Child labor is failing me.
At least you're fed.
Hey, man, they brought the food and left the cord. What a bad day in the neighborhood.
So what do you think, man? What do you miss about this place?
Man, well, gosh. Well, let me do the PC answer.
Yes.
That's the true answer. I miss my grandkids in Jersey. I guess for me in Jersey, I don't know. I think Isaiah Thomas said in his 30 for 30, after he messed up his ankle in that final season, he said, I've given these Detroit Pistons all I got. I had nothing left. When I left New Jersey in 2018, in September 2018, I said, I think I went hard for Jesus. I think I didn't hold anything back. I think God was glorified. I think I grew. I think I learned. I spent a lot of time in repentance for sin and growth and rebuke for failures, and raised my kids there and met my wife there, married there, planted churches there, learned to plant churches, ordained there. When I left Jersey, like Isaiah Thomas said, I had nothing left to give. So I guess I miss my grandkids, and I miss the nostalgia of being a Paterson boy, man. So most days now when I think about Jersey, I think about Hattie Logan, my mother, who died in 1983. I miss New Jersey in that sense of the nostalgia of playing on East 26th Street, hot peas and butter with my mother watching, or playing freeze tag. I miss the nostalgia, man. And so, yeah, I'm working on a cigar now I'm doing, and it's called E26. So my mild cigar is going to be called E26, East 26th Street. It's going to be named after that. So,
Nice.
yeah, so I miss, when I think about Paterson now, I just think about 11 years old, no care in the world, hot peas and butter, and freeze tag. Yeah, I guess when I think, and so I'll go further, food, we could talk about what I miss about some food. Well, you know, I'm a torpedo-based dude.
I know.
Across from Putman Oval.
Last time you came up, you almost got in a fight.
Oh gosh, it's always a problem. It's always a problem. But you know, when I was in Camden, I would tell the elders, we got to have elders meeting right now. I said, meet me at my house. They said, we're not going to have it at the building. I said, no, we'll have it at my house. So then I had a big Ford Expedition. So we'd have elder meetings on the turnpike on my way to go get a sandwich. So we leave Camden around 10 o'clock. They said, where we going, Diddy? I said, man, we going on elders meeting. Where to? Then they see that turnpike entrance. They say, are you going to get another sandwich? So we would meet in the car. We get to Torpedo Base around 12, get my sandwich, get everybody a sandwich.
What's the sandwich of choice, Doug?
Hot pastrami with pastrami gravy, shredded lettuce, little bit of spicy mustard, cut in half on an angle. Jesus, just I'm about to drive up right now to Paterson. So I lived in Camden about 8 years. I probably went to Torpedo Base 6-7 times a year. Just once a month, I would just drive up to Paterson. Also, so that was my what's the name trip. My other food is Guernsey Cress ice cream. I drive up on a Sunday after church to just go get Guernsey Cress. So we finished preaching. I said, come on, babe, we got to get out of here. Where we going? Get some ice cream. She see that turnpike. Are we going to Paterson to get ice cream? We are. It's only 2 hours. What's the big deal?
What you say about the food thing, but then I also want to put some stops on my food list, so I just wanted to find out where I should go. So
Guernsey Cress is one of my favorite ice cream spots. Old school Paterson ice cream right near my house, and right over there by School 24. And the third one I'll say in Paterson is they moved over to Hawthorne. Johnny and Haynes hot dogs.
Oh yeah. Oh,
they
yeah.
ain't the same when they left Paterson. They lack the C rating FDA. See, when you get up to A rating, when your place is all clean, the food just don't taste as good as when you were getting that C. They got too clean over in Hawthorne. They taste good. They taste regular. I liked it when I was running the risk of getting bacteria poisoning.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Ryan, anything else as we finish up with Doug here?
No, just thanks, Doug. Grateful for your relationship, man, your faithfulness, and just your friendship over the years, the way you coach us and partner with us. Grateful for you.
Man, praise God. Love y'all, man. I never forget preaching at Emergence. What was it, 4 services?
I think then, right now, our night service is now video, so you only have to go 3 in the morning.
Well, first, y'all had that
you got
Obi-Wan Kenobi hologram thing that you put me on. I felt like I was preaching to like the rebellion, like letting them know we're gonna take the empire. We taking them down. We're gonna take them, bro. That hologram thing, that thing blessed my soul. That thing, I still have that on my phone right now. When I show people, they're like, "Yo, Pastor Ryan, you remember when you were at Acts 29 and I showed people? People were like, yo, yeah. But I never forget.
You showed Paul Tripp, and he was like,
What's with this guy?
So I remember I had to change 4 times to preach at Emergence. I felt like Bobby Brown when I preached at Bobby Brown before he was getting high. Because I had the little mic, every little step we take. And I just felt like I changed 4 times. I remember one of the ladies from the church said, are you like another guest speaker? We just had a guest speaker. And I was like, no, it's me. Well, you had on turquoise. I said, I sweat, ma'am. I have to change. So she said, you did a wardrobe change? I said, no. Okay, yes, but I'm not Bobby Brown. But man, love y'all, love Emergence. Love what you guys are doing, how God is using you. And you know I'm praying, man, that we do I really want to see Irvington, Paterson reach with the gospel, with a gospel-centered church. I think Emergence is a place to go to help do that. I think if you call, and you guys do call your guys to Bold Vision, one thing about Emergence, you guys are a generous, faithful church, man. So just be praying, man. In this new time with Acts 29, man, I'm going to try to call a bunch of churches to build an urban church planning fund so that, man, we can get those churches off the ground, because one of the biggest fears for urban guys is they're not going to be able to get paid. And so, man, I really want to get that, because I don't think we have a shortage. We have somewhat of a shortage of dudes that really want to go do that. But I think that shortage is based on the fear of having to raise 100% of your funds, which is challenging. And I don't want to give 100% of the funds either, but I'm just praying for North Jersey. I love North Jersey. My dad, long-term North dude, lived in Paterson his whole life till he died. A lot of my family from Paterson. So I love Paterson. Really want to see a gospel work jump off in a big way in the hood in Paterson. I love what you guys are doing, and I love the sprinkles of Paterson folk that come up, but I'm praying for a grassroots Paterson church, solid gospel-centered, crazy disciple-making, gospel preaching with fire, Baptist-costal, Presbycostal church to jump off. And so I'm praying for you guys that the harvest is plenty, the labors are few. We're going to pray to the Lord of the harvest that he'd raise up people for Paterson, for Irvington, for Hillside, for Bloomfield, and really see an urban church movement take place up there. That's my deep, deep prayer. So I love you guys. I'm a big fan. If I lived there, I'd be a member of Emergence all day. I wouldn't tithe regular, but I would give something. And love y'all, man. Thanks for having me.
Love you too, Doug. Thanks for the time, man. Really awesome. Have a great one. Bye, guys. Have a great day.